I think the song you're going to cry at most is Want You Back, or maybe History of Man, for the girls who really get it, maybe. For this album, I think it was when I wrote the song There It Goes, and I wrote that song in Bergen in Norway, probably in November, and I just remember finishing it and thinking that that was just kind of, that was the end of the story I was trying to tell. I felt like I'd sort of closed the book. And I did actually write some more songs after I'd written that song, but I kind of knew, I think, in my heart, and I actually said to my manager at the time, I was like, I'm pretty sure, like, it's done now. And I'd never really had that before, but I think that song is just so much about closure and healing and ending a part of your life, that once I'd written that song, I just kind of knew that the album was done. At least the writing of the album was done. So there was actually so many differences. I mean, You Signed Up For This, arguably I wrote over the span of like 20 years. And more intensely, I guess, from like 18 to 20. But I was much younger then. It was sort of my first attempt at writing an album. So I think when I was writing The Good Witch, it was a much shorter time span. It was like a year. And I think I was more intentional with what I wanted to say. And I think it was I definitely wanted it to reflect my real life more than I ever had before. And I definitely was conscious of the album as a whole and how the songs worked with each other and worked within the concept of the album. And it's not a concept album, but it also kind of sometimes feels like it is. I guess there's just a lot of themes that run through it that feel cohesive and like part of a bigger picture. So yeah, I think I was more intentional. That's the main thing I would say. So fun fact, the name The Good Witch was the last thing that happened for this album. So I actually even wrote the song The Good Witch before I decided to title the album The Good Witch. But sort of interesting. So I had the title The Good Witch along with some other titles, and I was really, really stuck on which title to do. It was like truly traumatic. I just could not decide, and I found it very difficult. But I wrote the song The Good Witch because I'm a mastermind, and I was like, well, if I decide to title the album The Good Witch, which I was sort of feeling could be something I'd want to do, I was like, it feels important to me that I write an opening track like I did for You Signed Up For This. So I wrote the song The Good Witch, or at least I wrote like the first verses of The Good Witch with Joe when we were in Decoy, and then I sort of sat with it for a bit, and then when I decided to call the album The Good Witch, I went back to that song and I finished it and made it what it is today. But yeah, The Good Witch, the title, actually was the last thing. So all of the songs we'd written before we decided on the title. So we are rehearsing these this weekend, which I'm very excited for, and I want it to feel special and intimate. We're going to do an acoustic performance of the songs that we're doing, and I think it's going to be old songs that we've never played live before. It's going to be unreleased songs, I think, if you're well behaved. I want to talk a little bit more than I normally do. I want to sort of explain the first album. I want to explain The Good Witch. I want to explain where I'm at creatively and personally, and where I was at when I was making these records. I want it to feel like this night where I sort of bring you guys from the beginning to where we are right now, essentially. But also, what do you guys want to see, and what do you want to talk about, and what do you want to hear about, and what songs do you want to hear? Because if you tell me, then maybe I'll incorporate them. I'm taking suggestions. I've just realised that I keep starting these with so I'm not going to do that this time. But the song that took the longest, writing, producing, and actually the song that I'm probably the most proud of is The Band and I, because we started that song in late March, early April, after that first North American tour was finished. And then I finished it at the end of my second North American tour last year, so that was in November. And we wrote bits of it on tour with Ed, bits of it in this house here when we first moved in. And I'm proud of it because I think it so concisely has captured the way that touring feels to me, and the way that playing live feels to me, and the relationship I have with my band, and the relationship I have with you guys and with live music. And it's such a specific feeling and experience, but I feel like we really captured it. And I'm very proud of that. And it reminds me of Brooklyn on the first album, which I'm also very proud of. We said white wash. We said laundry. I was hoping somebody would ask me this. So I guess The Good Witch reflects sort of the key themes and motifs within the album, which I think of as destruction and power and chaos and magic and fate. It also reflects the narrator, which is me, and I really like the idea of, if the first album is You Signed Up For This and is addressing the reader or the listener, I really like that this album is sort of turning the camera lens back inwards, which is also what I felt like I was doing. I felt like I was really looking sort of within myself, this album. It's very personal and honest, every artist ever. But yeah, I always say that writing songs is kind of like doing magic, and it's also, you know, are you going to use your power for good or evil? And maybe sometimes it's both. And I like the idea of sort of, my job as a songwriter is building worlds and then destroying them. And that's what I feel like you do when you make an album. You build a world and then you can destroy it just as quickly. I'm running out of time. There were a lot of creative influences, but the two that stick out the most to me when I think about it is Joan Didion. I read a lot of her work for the first time last year, and the way she writes is so concise, it's so sharp. She has such good sort of perspective. And there was a quote on the back of a Joan Didion book that said, Joan Didion wastes no bullets. And I thought about that a lot when I was writing this album. And then also the album Melodrama by Lorde. Not so much sonically, although obviously I love that album, but just more so, it was her second record, and it was just so important culturally and personally to myself and my friends when we heard it. I think we were like 17. And it just sort of, it shaped my teenage years, and it shaped the rest of my life, and it continues to be an album that's so important to me that I listen to every year and I get something new from. And I just wanted this album, The Good Witch, to mean what that album meant to me, to somebody else, if that makes sense. I shot the artwork and all the single artwork with an amazing French photographer called Alice Moutier, and I think we actually were shooting it before we even knew the album title, which was kind of crazy, but I had a vision for it. I just really wanted it to feel sort of powerful, and I wanted to take up a lot of the frame. I wanted it to be very much sort of the center point. And I think when we were shooting that image, we had the sort of the sky behind me, and I was over some plexiglass, Alice was under some plexiglass, and I just wanted to feel like very in control, I guess. I wanted to feel like the center point of because I guess reflecting the music and the fact that I for this album at least, the music I was making, I was very in control. It was my story, it was my pen, they're all my words. I'm so within all this music, and I wanted that to be reflected in the artwork. Guys, you know everything I do is for you. Of course, what do you take me for? BSC. I mean, if there's ever been a song for Delulu Girl, it's BSC. It's literally your national anthem. Therapy as well, to be fair, has got definite, you know, flourishes of Delulu. What else do we have? Therapy, BSC. I mean, Watch. Watch is for the Delulu girls. Oh my god, I was delusional when I wrote that song. Good times. Good times.